For the past 21 years, the Inspire Synergy has championed transformative leadership across Africa. This year, the Inspire Leadership Summit is themed Africa Manifest as a rallying call for us all to manifest the African dream. Save the dates from Monday 4th to Saturday 9th of August 2025 from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. East African Time daily live on Zoom. Connect with brilliant African leaders like Dr. James Magara, Professor Anand Pillai, Mrs. Dorothy Kisaka, Reverend Anthony Ashaye, Mrs. Allen Kajina, Bishop J.B. Masinde, Mr. Solomon Ikhioda, Dr. Shingi Munyeza, among many others as they ignite your potential. To register, visit our website www.inspiresynergy.org or call or send a message to 0700 554646. Inspire Synergy, igniting your potential.
Our theme again, like we've said, is Africa Manifest. And without wasting much time, I want to introduce our keynote speaker for today. It's going to be a little different and you'll find out how. Yes, we will have a lineup of speakers, but we'll have a keynote speaker to set the trend. And our focus this week, or rather today actually, is going to be new thinking for Africa in the global reset. So every speaker you hear will be directing their conversation towards this theme. So our first speaker, returning to Inspire, is a man who is immensely unconventional in his thinking, and this has allowed him to create frameworks for designing models and structures that free businesses to innovate new products and propositions, audiences and channels so they can add business value. He is a keen trend and culture watcher, which I believe each one of us needs to be if we are going to rise up to the occasion here in Africa. He specializes in mining codes from preceding cultures to help brands win relevance and resonance in the marketplace. Please welcome back to Inspire Leadership Summit 2025, Mr. Solomon Ikhioda.
Everything has been like wrapped up about what I am going to say today, and then I think we will see that. But immediately, I see a tension, and I'm going into the presentation already, that we are not waiting for policies. What my conversation is going to be about today is that we are to influence policies. Because policies influence everything and they influence every one of us. Once a signature is signed on a policy, it begins to direct everything, whether economy, whether culture, everything. And it's that tension that I think that we are going to have to explore. Africa Manifest. We are going to be exploring new thinking for Africa in the current global reset. This is a keynote by Solomon Ikhioda at the Inspire Synergy Summit for 2025. My presentation is broken into, the thinking is broken into, say, about 5 or so sections. We are going to be looking at what I call the code, because I think that there is a code for us to be able to manifest. There is a code for it. I think we are going to also be looking at the setting. What is the global setting right now for us to be able to now reset? Then we look at the setting for Africa, and we look at what I want to call the factory setting. By factory setting, I mean, what is the setting that God has given, which is the ideal that we should follow? And then what is it that is causing the tension, which is what is the battleground? What do we have to fight? And then what is the reset that we need, okay, to do? So, the global setting, we are in a world that is fast retreating from committee. When we say committee, we are looking at associations of nations for their mutual benefit. That is how actually the world is supposed to be. The world is also a community. And so a country is supposed to benefit from the other. But the point is that all of these collaborations and cooperations we see that it's actually being destroyed, because one of the most prominent countries in the world, which is the United States of America, as we all know, we know what's happening, we know what's been going on since January, has actually come in to disrupt the order. And I will look at this from the viewpoint of trends that are coming out of it. And these trends are not about America only, because we will see that some of these trends also hold applications, or they also happen in your country, in my country. There is the trend of what we call neo-patrimonialism, that is rulers expressing their personal agendas through patronage directly or through a network of loyalists. Okay, they are cutting off formal institutions, cutting off established laws, and we are beginning to see, it's a common word, what we call autocracies, really. You really cannot look at a lot of these countries that talk about democracy and say these are actually democratic in the way that they operate. Whether in the West or in my own country, Nigeria as well, this is something that is clear and is going on. There is isolationism now. Isolationism, the policy of remaining apart from other groups and other countries, especially in political affairs. What is the relationship of all of this with Africa, for example? A lot of Africa has depended on aid. We know what has happened with USAID, for example. The United States aid or beneficiation to Africa has been rationalized, okay, with 40% of its budget on Africa cut. The Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, it ends on the 30th of September this year. There is a trend of amorality. Amorality is when people do not care about the ethics, they do not care about the consequences, or whatever happens when things are not done properly or are not done in their proper order. In my country, I know, and I guess in Uganda as well, and in all of Africa, there used to be threats to governments or nations who are having their elections, and the elections are not seen to be transparent or properly done. And then you begin to hear about things like withholding visas and all of that. The country that has been the leading country in the world, which is the democracy that much of the world actually trumpets, is saying that they are going to curtail their practice of assessing the fairness of foreign elections or of things that go on in other countries. This is a statement by Mark Rubio, who says that they are going to be concerned with their own interest only. So you are beginning to hear my country first in different parts of the world. Then there is the whole idea of the big one, identity politics and racism. Please, let's remember that we are trying to look at a code, and a code is not something that is obvious. It is something that you have to examine, and then you have to crack it to be able to know or understand how to deal with a problem. The whole concept of identity politics, I want to talk about some case studies. My country, Nigeria, has the leader of the British opposition, which is the Conservative Party, as a Nigerian by birth. There's an ongoing fury and anger by a lot of Nigerians with the lady, Mrs. Kemi Badenoch. She has just made a statement that she doesn't see herself as Nigerian by identity. And so people are saying that she wants to ingratiate herself with the British so that it will be seen that it is not a foreigner that is trying to become the prime minister of their country. That's going on now. We know the whole story of MAGA, which is about making America great again. What does it really mean, and what are the implications of making America great again? When we hear that term, what does it mean? What are the implications of it to Africans? Because the context is actually Africa here. What are the implications of it to Black people, to the Black race? I want to talk about a case study that is ongoing now. It's a cultural one, which is why I actually smiled when Mr. Wafula was talking about a cultural restoration, that we are going to confront issues and we are going to push our African uniqueness, our affirmation as Africans. I'll tell you this story briefly and quickly. American Eagle is an American brand. They make jeans, okay? And it's essentially about, it's a shop, okay, for mainly young people, going back to Mr. Wafula's emphasis on young people, which I think is the perfect strategy and very, very spot on. There's a lady, Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney is an actress. We'll go to the comparison of an advert that is causing a lot of trouble in America now among the whites and the blacks. She says that genes are passed down from parents to their offspring, and that things like hair color, personality, hair, and even the color of the eyes are things that are passed down from parents to children. And so she says that in her own case, her eyes are blue. When we talk about mining codes from popular culture, people have to calm down and see what this thing means. Because when you hear jeans, what you'll be thinking that is being advertised is Jeans, which is clothing. But is this what this lady is talking about? Is this what the advert is actually talking about? Is this the sentiment that it is exploring? Is it jeans as in apparel or jeans as in Genes, which is genetics? This is where the world is now, about eugenics, about some people trying to say that they are the superior race. There is even the tendency towards the issues that Hitler brought about and led to the killing of millions of people or millions of Jews. The battleground is in culture. So thank you, sir, Mr. Wafula. We must understand what the battleground is. It is in culture and commerce. Ever since this advert came out, there has been a backlash by Black people. Because a lady who is known as a big-time personality in the world of music, who is Beyonce, did an advert. She was the spokesperson for an advert for Levi's jeans, another jeans brand, where she came and then she tried to present that brand. How did race get into clothing? And what is the implication of this for the world? When we hear MAGA, Make America Great Again, what does it mean? Why is it that we see that there is a serious attempt to kill what they consider to be DEI, diversity, okay, equality, and inclusion? What is the implication of this for Africa? This is the advert. Please watch the homophone. Can we see the homophone? That's Beyonce on the left. And then bottom left and top left. This is the new advert. Beyonce's advert is for Levi's jeans. This advert is for American Eagle. So what is said and what is not said, there is an attempt to rewrite what people consider to be the new code for beauty. So this is a race war that we are seeing on our screen. And if you know, you know. We are told in Psalm 119 verse 130 that the entrance of the word gives light and it gives understanding to the simple. That is when people become born again, when they have the word of God, they become people who are critical thinkers. They are no longer simpletons. The whole purpose of this advert to the right is to show that there are new standards of beauty. And it is an attempt to kill what is considered to be virtuous and desirable in a beautiful woman. Genes are passed from parents to their children. For an advert like this, that is carrying such racist sentiments, you would think that the brand was going to be in trouble. 2 years ago, that is what would have happened to a brand that dared to come up with this kind of advertising. But what has happened to this brand? The stock price has risen by 11% in 1 week. This advert is supported by the far right. It is supported by the conservative media. It is supported by the White House, and it is being promoted as such. Battleground of culture. So what is the setting? We have looked at the macro, global. What is the Africa setting? Because if we are going to manifest, we must understand that we have to deal with our obstacles to manifestation. Mr. Wafula talked about the difference, okay, between sons and servants. We have to deal with our own issues here because we must understand what politics, which is what Mr. Wafula talked about. We must understand the role that politics plays and the role that we as the church, because the context here are the sons of God. What is the role that the sons of God have to play in the manifestation of God's rule on earth and in Africa? We have a major obstacle, and I see our obstacle. As I say this, I see that each and every one of us should look in our mind's eye, whether we are correct or not. The major obstacle to Africa manifesting is the idea that we essentially, more than anything else, have child kings in Africa. What do we mean by a child king? The Bible says in Ecclesiastes, as we see here, that woe to you, O land, whose king is a child, and whose princes feast in the morning. When we are looking at children, we are looking at the Greek word nepios. The counterpoint to that is teleos. That is to be complete, to be perfect, to be mature, to be adults. The essential or the quintessential or what is common among a lot of African rulership or leadership It's about childishness. How do we know when a king is a child? I will mention a country, which is my own country. A president comes in, and the first thing that the president thinks about is, let me buy a bigger plane that is befitting. Let me buy a yacht. This is the first time in Nigeria that we are having a presidential yacht. As one of the first issues, let me fix a house that has already been built for the vice president. And the word that was used is that something that is befitting. And the amount of money that is spent is 22 billion naira to remodel a house, not to redecorate a house that has been built under the guise of being befitting. So you can see that priorities are wrong. And these are what, like children, you will call toys. A beautiful car, a beautiful yacht, a beautiful plane, and all that. This should not be the first things that we are thinking about. We shouldn't be feasting in the morning. We should look at priorities. But this is common in much of Africa. So this is what we have as the Africa setting. So what is the factory setting? By factory setting, I mean, God is the one who owns the earth, and he made the earth and everything in it. How would God want this to be? How would God want for Africa to be? Scripture tells us in Acts chapter 17, okay, that God who made the world and everything in it does not live in temples built by human hands. But what is crucial here, the Apostle Paul is the one who was talking to the, trying to talk to the Stoic and the Epicurean philosophers at the Areopagus in Athens. He says that God did this because he set and determined where each and every one should be born and the time. So God is deliberate about us being Africans and being in Africa. What is it that we as Christians should do to return and reset the world or Africa that we have so painted? Christianity is built to make us resilient against hellish policies. That is the whole meaning of I will build my church and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. This is the political aspect that actually demands the person or the people who say that they are Christians, who are the sons of God. Sons are people who are not children. They are the people who are mature enough to know to take care of their father's real estate and say that, no, we must return back from what we are seeing to how God will want for it to be. And that's why the Apostle Paul said, God did this so that we will seek him and perhaps find him, because even your own poets, he was talking to the Greek philosophers now, that even your own poets wrote that in him you live and move and have your being. So we need to look at what is the Africa quotient, what is the God quotient in whatever we are doing to bring us to the identity that our president has just mentioned to us in his introduction. There is an African identity. If we are saying, we are talking about Africa, have we defined what Africa is? What makes something Africa? The music that we talked about, and Nigeria was specifically mentioned, is Afrobeats. In my day as a younger person, we did not sing and dance to this kind of music. We danced to the music of the West. But now we see that there's actually a restoration and a renaissance. That beat is different from the beat of the West. So the music that we are dancing to in a metaphorical sense must be African music in anything that we are doing. That's why I use that term, what is the Africa quotient? of whatever we say that we are going to be doing to be able to reset Africa. What is the God quotient? How do we find God specifically in this policy? So the research really is, this is what brings me to policies now. Christianity is built in such a way that it is supposed to be resilient against hellish policies. So if we are going to reset something, we must look for God in our geopolitical context. It is in policies that you find whether it is God that is in the context or whether it is Satan. When those policies are hellish, what will happen is that people will suffer. Nobody cares whether there's health care. The money for hospitals is embezzled. So at the end of the day, what you see is in the news, there's a lot of development, there's a lot of votes for infrastructure and all of that, but they never get built because there is corruption. Or in some cases, the solutions that government is supposed to be bringing are not relevant. And please, if we do not understand that policy is everything, then there is trouble. Because no matter what we do, just one signature determines. Let us take a look at what's going on in America, because we are going to be looking at curriculum. Somebody says that every university is supposed to present whatever is being taught in that university. Every university is supposed to present a list of their faculty. What is the goal? The goal is to be able to control what is taught in such a way that they will rewrite the curriculum that suits their agenda. So that whole idea of racism, that whole idea of the big, if we go back to Beyonce, that whole idea of the Black person coming up at all in the consciousness of America must be killed. And so a new model and standard for beauty is supposed to be presented. This is very, very intricate. The church must understand. We must understand this whole thing that is going on. And this is what the Apostle Paul was talking about. For about 3 consecutive Inspire Synergy conferences now, before this, I have particularly spoken about this thing, 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 to 6, where he says that every thought, every philosophy must be held captive to Christ. And the way to win is that we must determine that these philosophies and theories are Christ-centered, that it is when we have been able to do this that we punish the disobedience of philosophies that in this case are racist, philosophies that tend to put people down and they are not allowed to affirm their being. It is only then that we are punishing the disobedience of these people. So signatures are crucial. The church must understand how to work. And in the next couple of slides, which is what is going to end this, I'm going to give an example of something that is emerging that all of us are seeing before us. That is Pope Leo the 14th and his recent reforms in the Catholic Church. How what we have been talking about shifting to having an understanding of philosophy and politics and the church playing in it is the only way that we can become people who are actually leading and not following. So the battleground, as we have seen, is at the intersection of culture and commerce. The example that we just gave is about culture and commerce. People are trying to frame a culture. And it's on the basis of this culture that products and services are created and designed, solutions that are relevant to the context. I am talking, my examples are essentially from advertising because this is where I play. The architect, we have their own example. The person who is in finance, we have their own example. The person who is in justice will have their own example. So the research must understand gates. It is the essential moral obligation directed by God to govern the earth. It is a political obligation because gates serve as the place of justice, of power, of security, of spiritual transition. Gates symbolize access to God's presence. When we are talking about Africa resetting, we are saying that societal impact must be measured by institutionalized right doing. The operative scripture here, as far as I am concerned, is Micah 6:8. He has shown thee, O man, what is it that is good? And what does God require of you? 3 things scripture says: to love justice, to have mercy, which is be compassionate. The policy must be compassionate. Elections that are conducted must be seen to be transparent. In my country, we really do not have elections anymore. It's just elections. The judiciary has been bought. You see that an election is going on. There are 30 local governments in a state. One person has won 20 of the local governments when votes are being counted. And somebody just says, announce the person who is losing as the winner and let us go to court. You go to court, you are not getting justice there. So at the end of the day, the country is being turned into a one-party state because even governors of the opposition are being threatened and they are abandoning the parties on which, the platforms on which they won election to join the ruling party. So you are now having a situation in which nearly all of the country, including governors that won on other platforms, are coming to the ruling party. Why is this dangerous? The reason why it is dangerous is because you cannot hold anybody, the party to account. The judiciary is bought, the military is bought, every aspect, and people are suffering. And if this is what is the example of hellish conditions, this is the reason, please, why Jesus Christ built the church. For the gates of hell, for the policies of hell to not triumph. Gates are signatures. One signature determines what is going to go on in a country. So the church must understand that it is an error not to influence policy. So that is the point that I'm really making. Policies affect all of us. So it is an error for us to think that there's a separation of church and state. There is no such thing. I will give you the keys to the kingdom means that you are going to unlock the kingdom. But there are keys, there are codes that you use. In politics or in policy, they are called fundamental objectives and directive principles of policy. what the fundamental objectives are, people who understand constitutions, is what are the desired outcomes or ideals for the country. Micah chapter 6 verse 8 says, the objectives, God's objective for a nation, for a continent, is that the country or the people or governance acts justly, is compassionate, and there is humility. What does humility really mean? Humility means to have an understanding that God made the earth, God made the world, and he has a way in which he wants the world to run. Humility is to be in agreement and in consonance with that, not for us to do it the way that we like, because that is what is pride. So if we are going to establish societal impact measured by institutionalized right doing, to have a practical example of the earth being the Lord's and the fullness of the earth, we must have an understanding of this objective. This is what we are supposed to be fighting for. This is what Christianity is meant to influence. Otherwise, we cannot achieve or gain anything if there is no justice, if there is no compassion, if there is no humility. Then what are the directive principles? These are the specific policies. Okay, there must be a just judiciary if there's going to be justice. To love justice, if there is going to be empathy, which is to have mercy, we must understand innovation and production. What is innovation? Introduction of a new meaning into something and creating something that is new, that actually brings new value. I call this presentation codes because these are the things that each and every Christian, each and every businessman is supposed to walk into whatever they are producing. If you are going to walk in humility with God, your theories must be Christ-centered, your philosophies must be Christ-centered. Where is this supposed to lead us at the end of the day? Where this is supposed to lead us is this. Africa must manifest through extraordinary strategy. Let's take 2 minutes here. Scripture says, unto us a child is born, and a son has been given to us. He shoulders responsibility. His name is Wonderful Counselor. Another translation says Wonderful Advisor. That term, Wonderful Counselor, actually means an extraordinary strategist. What the son does is that he gives the strategy that the earth, the world, cannot gainsay. He's going to be called the mighty God, everlasting Father. His dominion will be vast, and he will bring immeasurable peace and progress. So this is where the code really is. The church has to understand strategy. And the strategy that we are proposing is that before we do anything as a basis, we must understand strategic thinking. We must. We will get to the Pope, this which I am particularly elated. We are going to be, let's see, there are going to be arguments. There are going to be people who are saying, like the Pope is already experiencing, a lot of pushback. But the church has to be redesigned in the way that we think. These people understand strategy. They know that you play at the place of curriculum. What is it that is being taught? Because that's going to determine everything. We have to understand the paradigm and the principle of crooked managers and wise serpents. We know all of these scriptures. He says, now here's a surprise, the master priest, the story of the crooked manager. We don't have a lot of time. But I want to touch on something, which is what you see written in red there. Okay? The children of this world are wiser in their generation than the people who are supposed to be the children of light. So what Jesus is saying to us here is that he wants for us to be smart, to see what the crooked manager did, streetwise people. But in our own case, let it be that we are doing what is right. We are using our own smartness for what is right, using every adversity to stimulate us into creative thinking and behavior, rather than just working about on good behavior. These people are deliberate in whatever they are doing. We must be deliberate in whatever we are doing. So the call is a catechism of politics that is needed. We need to build Africa's political narrative by understanding what we call cultural graffiti and production. And the stage is policy. That is the stage, that is theater. Because everything runs on the signature, it runs on that. We must influence it, which means we must get involved. The ideology is the sword. We must design and write ideologies for fighting. And Christ must be the foundation. Back to our president, Mr. Wafula. We must understand our identity. Like he said, we must understand our peculiar history, and we must understand our values. There is not one party that I see existing that we say we are satisfied with. We are seeing what is going on in America. We are seeing how the evangelicals have decided to pitch in with the Republican Party, for example. Can anybody who is Christian say that whatever is the outcome and the way that these guys are going about whatever they are doing, apart from the fact that they are dealing with the culture of the LGBTQ and all of that, which is something that is positive. But what about the racism? What about the oppression? What about all of the other negative things? Which means that there is no ideal. We are the ones who are supposed to build the ideal with Christ as the foundation. We need a new catechism for people who have been Catholics or people who are Catholics. This needs to be documented. It has to be written so that we know what it is that is the curriculum for influencing policy and politics. So if we say that we are doing that God is doing a new thing, the new thing that has to be done is a political obligation for the church to arise, for Africa to arise. And we are the ones who are the children of God, who are the sons of God, who are manifesting to show what godliness really is about. We need to design a syllabus for an ethical, look, there's a mistake there, ethical-based economy founded on responsible production and consumption. I am going to go into something that delights my heart. I called it here Good News from the Campus. For 3 or 4 sessions, I've been using that term, that the cathedral must make way for the campus. We are seeing this happening. But the Pope has another term for it. He talks about the mandate of scientific literacy, which is one of the among the many reforms that he has just come up with. In reform number 12, the Pope says a faith that is afraid of the truth is no faith at all. He says that there is a need to bring an end to the war between the lab coat and the cassock. Brilliant. Christianity should not be afraid of inquiry. It should not be afraid of creating something new. It should not be afraid of seeing something that is there as status quo, but is not serving the purpose and is not revealing Christ. So if we are going to do that, we must understand that we must play beyond the cassock. We must play beyond the cathedral. We must play beyond the church as a building and look through this telescope and see that the hand of God can also be seen in science, can also be seen in every aspect of the world, which means that there must be inquiry, there must be creativity, there must be production. So let us take our Christianity into politics. Because like he says, a faith that is afraid of the truth is no faith at all. Otherwise, the only place where we can be is we'll just be at the place of sermons only. He says that to ignore the warnings of science on our climate is to commit a grave sin of omission. The whole issue now about climate change or climate phenomena generally is real. What is the church's response? What is the church's role? What is the church doing about this thing that affects our father's real estate, which is the earth? The Pope is elevating the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and giving it a new name with a mandate to study science and integrate his finding into the church in real time. And he says, for example, all seminaries must include a rigorous curriculum in cosmology and environment and evolutionary biology. And this must be taught by leading secular scientists in the church. Brilliant. I particularly, and like all of us, will understand that this is disruptive. This thing is no more about prayer only and Bible study. How do you bring all of this into real life in what people can actually touch? Which is what the challenge is if we are going to look at a reset. These are the issues that I want to share with us today. And that is the reason why I called it the code. The extraordinary strategist, which is the term for wonderful counselor, is telling us to look at these issues and understand that we must change politics. If we do not change politics, politics affects all of us. There is no way we can go. There's nowhere we can go and have a reset. Africa must give its own, coming back to my own trade now, must give its own affirmation of Africa, must define Africa. And this is what we are supposed to now promote. And the world must see that it is better, because our political ideology is closer, if I dare say it, to Christianity than many other parts of the world. We are people of family. We are people of community. We are people of culture. The world wants to have this, but they are not able to get it because we are not promoting it, we have not articulated it, and then we stand by it, and at the end of the day, begin to give, even if it is our awards or whatever. So when we get to the place of maybe questions and answers on how we can go forward with this, then we'll begin to have a discussion. So this is what I'm throwing out for conversation at this conference. And afterwards, on this note, I want to say thank you, and I will take questions and we'll continue our discussion.